Dawn of Arrogance. June 22, 1941, 3:15 hours, the Bug River near Brest-Litovsk. Mist clings low to the reeds. Engines idle then surge. Steel tracks bite wet earth. Somewhere in the dark, a sentry coughs, unheard. The first artillery salvo cracks the night open, a rolling thunder that shatters glass and sleep alike. You can smell cordite before you understand what it means. Searchlights snap on. The river flashes white. Across the water, silhouettes move. German assault pioneers of the 45th Infantry Division push rubber boats forward, oars dipping soundlessly until the order comes. Then everything happens at once. Machine guns stutter. Flares rise. Bridges erupt in flame. Luftwaffe bombers roar overhead, Heinkels and Dorniers droning east, their bellies full, their crews calm, almost bored. This is supposed to be easy. Behind the riverbank, Panzer crews wait inside their machines, hatches open, cigarettes glowing red in the dark. Panzer III and IV tanks, engines warm, radios humming with clipped voices. Orders come down from Corps headquarters with crisp certainty. Advance at first light. Breakthrough by noon. Minsk in days. Moscow before winter. Winter. The word barely exists here. At Wolfschanz in East Prussia, Adolf Hitler has already been awake for hours. Maps cover the table. Red arrows slice deep into Soviet territory. He taps the Eastern Front with a finger and dismisses the warnings he's heard for months. The generals who speak of distance, weather, attrition. He has seen this before, he thinks. Poland. France. Speed decides wars. Shock breaks enemies. The Red Army will collapse like a rotten door. He calls it a colossus with feet of clay. Out here, on the frontier, General Oberst Heinz Guderian's Panzergruppe II surges forward exactly as designed. Blitzkrieg in its purest form. Combined arms in perfect rhythm. Dive bombers scream down ahead of the armor, Stukas howling as sirens are switched on deliberately, terror as a weapon. Soviet positions explode in fountains of dirt and flame. Survivors run. Some surrender. Others die where they stand. The roads east choke instantly. Horse carts. Refugees. Soviet units caught mid-march, uniforms dusty, rifles slung, faces stunned. German tanks overtake them with contemptuous ease. Motorcyclists weave ahead, goggles down, scarves snapping in the wind. This is movement. This is momentum. This is everything German doctrine has promised. By noon, Brest Fortress burns. Soviet resistance is chaotic but fierce. NKVD border troops fire until ammunition runs dry. A lone anti-tank gun knocks out a Panzer at point-blank range before being silenced. Inside the fortress, pockets of Red Army soldiers fight from cellars and rubble, refusing to surrender even as fire consumes the stone. The Germans note it, file it away as an anomaly. It does not fit the plan. The plan says this war will be over in weeks. Further north, Panzergruppe IV drives toward the Baltic states. Further south, Panzergruppe I smashes through Ukraine's frontier defenses. Everywhere the same pattern repeats. Encirclement. Annihilation. Entire Soviet armies vanish into vast pockets. At Białystok. At Minsk. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners shuffle west, dazed, hungry, guarded by soldiers who barely look at them anymore. Confidence grows with every kilometer. Officers laugh about Christmas in Berlin. Mechanics boast about how far their tanks have gone without serious maintenance. Staff officers sketch new lines on maps with casual arrogance, pushing arrows ever deeper. Moscow feels close now. Close enough to touch. Close enough to imagine. No one talks about the roads. They are dirt. Endless, rutted tracks that turn to dust under summer sun, then to mud with the first rains. Trucks bog down. Horses collapse. Fuel trucks fall behind. Ammunition lags. It is inconvenient, irritating, but not yet frightening. The enemy is retreating too fast to matter. Or so it seems. In the weeks that follow, the Red Army does not collapse. It bleeds. It bends. It retreats, yes, but not blindly. Entire formations vanish eastward, slipping away from encirclement just in time. Bridges are blown. Rail yards destroyed. Fields burned. Villages emptied. The Germans advance through silence and smoke, their victories growing larger, their supply lines thinner. Still no one says the word. Winter. In Berlin, propaganda reels show triumphant columns, smiling soldiers, captured Soviet equipment stacked like trophies. The public believes the war is already won. The Führer believes it too. He mocks the idea that climate or geography could defeat German will. Napoleon failed because he was weak, because he hesitated. Germany will not. Out on the steppe, nights begin to cool. Not cold. Just enough to notice. Just enough for a tank commander to zip his jacket higher before closing the hatch. Just enough for condensation to form on metal. Just enough for engines to cough slightly before catching. No one is worried. Not yet. The advance continues faster than planning ever allowed. And somewhere far to the east, beyond the horizon of German maps and assumptions, something vast is waiting. Silent. Patient. Unimpressed by speed or steel. And it is already moving toward them. Speed without limits. July 1941, somewhere east of Minsk. Midday heat shimmers above the road. Dust hangs so thick it coats tongues and teeth. A Panzer IV rumbles past a burned-out Soviet truck, its wheels still smoking, the stench of oil heavy in the air. The advance has not slowed. If anything, it has accelerated beyond expectation. Guderian's columns no longer wait for infantry. They surge ahead, radios crackling, commanders improvising on the move. This is not war by timetable anymore. This is pursuit. Soviet units retreat in fragments, some dissolving entirely before contact. Others fight briefly, fiercely, then disappear again into the forests and fields. The Germans call it chaos. They mistake it for collapse. At Corps headquarters, situation maps struggle to keep up. Red pins marking Soviet forces are crossed out faster than clerks can replace them. Blue arrows stretch farther east every day. Fuel consumption exceeds estimates. Ammunition usage double projection. The numbers don't quite add up, but the results on the ground silence concern. Victory has momentum now, and momentum feels unstoppable. In the south, Panzergruppe 1 smashes through toward Kiev. In the north, Army Group North races for Leningrad. Everywhere, German armor seems to be rewriting the rules of distance. Crews sleep beside their tanks, boots still on, waking to engines already turning. Mechanics work by flashlight, tightening bolts, replacing tracks, improvising repairs with whatever metal they can find. The machines keep moving, and as long as they do, belief holds. Hitler receives reports daily. Encirclements counted in the hundreds of thousands. Entire Soviet armies erased. He grows impatient with caution. Each delay feels like sabotage. When generals suggest consolidating, waiting for infantry, securing supply lines, he bristles. Speed, he insists, is everything. The enemy is wounded. Press the knife deeper. The Red Army appears to confirm his confidence. Soviet command and control is shattered. Communications fail. Units fight without orders. Some officers flee. Others are shot by political commissars for retreating without permission. The battlefield is littered with abandoned guns, wrecked tanks, discarded boots. German soldiers photograph it all, proof of a dying enemy. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. Soviet factories beyond the Urals begin to move. Entire plants are dismantled, loaded onto trains, sent east piece by piece. Locomotives run day and night, hauling machinery, workers, families. New divisions form far from the front, drilling with brutal urgency. Fresh commanders learn fast or disappear. Losses are accepted, absorbed, replaced. At the front, the Red Army trades space for time. German units notice changes without fully understanding them. Resistance stiffens around key points. Ambushes strike supply convoys at night. Partisans cut phone lines, sabotage railways, melt back into villages that look empty by day. Each incident feels isolated, manageable. Together they form a pattern the Germans are not trained to see. The roads worsen. Summer rains arrive suddenly, turning dust into glue. Trucks sink to their axles. Horses strain and fall. Recovery vehicles work non-stop, dragging machines free while columns stack up behind them. Officers shout. Schedules slip. Fuel trucks arrive late, sometimes empty. Tanks wait, engines silent, crews tense, watching the horizon. Still the advance resumes. By August, the distances become undeniable. Maps no longer fit neatly on tables. Moscow is still hundreds of kilometers away, yet orders demand acceleration. Hitler diverts armor south to encircle Kiev, chasing another massive victory. The pocket closes. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet prisoners are taken again. It is the largest encirclement in history. And it costs time. The weeks bleed away. Summer edges toward autumn. Nights cool further. Dew forms thick on tank hulls each morning. Engines take longer to start. Nothing alarming. Just noticeable. Soldiers begin to talk about weather, casually at first. Jokes about Russian mud. About endless land. About how big this country really is. They laugh it off. In September, the first hints of something darker appear. Early frosts dust the ground white before dawn, vanishing by mid-morning. Lubricants thicken slightly. Boots stiffen overnight. Tank crews curse quietly as metal feels sharper, colder to the touch. These are inconveniences, nothing more. Winter equipment has not been issued. It isn't scheduled. The war is supposed to end before that matters. Soviet resistance grows more deliberate. Defensive lines form instead of dissolving. Artillery concentrations increase. Counterattacks strike flanks, probing, testing. German units repel them, but the fights feel different now. Less panic. More coordination. The enemy is learning, adapting under fire. Some German officers begin to worry. They write cautious notes in diaries. Mention distances. Mention fuel. Mention weather. The high command does not want to hear it. Victory is too close. Moscow looms as both symbol and objective. Take it, Hitler believes, and the Soviet state will collapse entirely. The order comes, Operation Typhoon. The final drive on Moscow. Columns reorganize. Worn tanks are pushed forward anyway. Supply officers scrape together fuel from every source. Infantry marches with blistered feet, coats already wearing thin. Everyone understands this is the decisive moment. The last great push. And as engines roar back to life in the advance resumes, the sky to the east darkens. Not with enemy aircraft but with clouds. Heavy. Full. Unmoving. Rain begins to fall. At first it is almost welcome. Dust settles. Air cools. Then the ground gives way beneath the tracks. Wheels spin uselessly. Men strain, slip, curse. Roads dissolve into rivers of mud that swallow vehicles whole. The Russians have a word for it. Rasputitsa. And it is only the beginning. When the roads vanished. October 1941, dawn west of Vyazma. Rain falls without urgency, steady and merciless. It drums against steel hulls, soaks greatcoats, seeps into seams no one knew existed. A Panzer III lurches forward, tracks churning, then sinks. Not dramatically. Quietly. As if the earth itself has decided to keep it. Drivers gun engines. Mud sprays high, thick and black, slapping against armor plates. The tank does not move. Nearby, a half-track slides sideways into a ditch, its wheels spinning uselessly. Horses scream as wagons tip and collapse. The road, if it can still be called that, has become a living thing pulling everything down. This is Rasputitsa. And Blitzkrieg has no answer for it. Columns stretch for kilometers, frozen in place. Fuel trucks cannot reach the front. Ammunition wagons vanish into the mire. Recovery vehicles are overwhelmed, crews working knee-deep in mud, ropes snapping, tempers flaring. Orders crackle over radios demanding movement that is physically impossible. Maps show roads. Reality has erased them. German infantry presses on regardless. Boots rot. Socks never dry. Men stumble forward under the weight of rifles and packs, breath fogging in the cold air. Tanks that do move crawl at walking speed, engines straining, transmissions screaming in protest. Every kilometer forward costs hours, sometimes days. The Red Army does not retreat blindly anymore. Near Vyazma and Bryansk, Soviet forces allow themselves to be encircled, then fight outward in coordinated bursts. Small units slip through forests, reappear behind German lines, cut supply routes already hanging by a thread. Artillery fires from concealed positions, then relocates before counter-battery fire can respond. This is no longer panic. This is resistance with intent. At Army Group Center headquarters, concern finally sharpens into something closer to fear. Reports arrive late, incomplete, often contradictory. Frontline units request winter clothing. They request lubricants that will function in cold. They request time. None of these things are available. Hitler refuses to hear it. From the wolf's lair he issues orders that deny reality. Hold ground. Advance relentlessly. No withdrawals. No excuses. He still believes Moscow is within reach, that one final effort will break Soviet will. Generals who argue are dismissed or silenced. The idea that weather could defeat German arms feels like an insult. But the weather does not care. Temperatures drop suddenly. Nights plunge below freezing, then rise again by day. Mud hardens, then melts, then hardens again. Vehicles freeze into the ground overnight. Crews light fires beneath engines, coaxing life from metal with desperate ingenuity. Oil thickens. Gearboxes resist. Steel contracts, bolts crack. Men begin to suffer. Fingers numb. Faces split and bleed. Frostbite appears in toes and ears, dismissed at first, then feared. There are no winter uniforms yet, only thin greatcoats and wool scarves meant for Europe, not the Russian interior. Soldiers wrap feet in rags, newspapers, anything they can find. Still the order stands. Advance. By mid-October, German spearheads reach within striking distance of Moscow's outer defenses. The city feels close now, almost visible through the trees and mist. Morale flickers upward. If they can just push a little farther. If they can just hold on. Then the temperature drops again. This time it does not rise. On the night of October 31st, frost settles deep into the ground. Engines refuse to start in the morning. Batteries die. Fuel lines clog. Even weapons fail. Machine gun bolts seize. Rifles misfire. Tank turrets turn sluggishly, then not at all. Crews beat on mechanisms with gloved fists, breath steaming, panic growing. The Soviets are ready. Fresh divisions appear seemingly from nowhere. Siberian troops, hardened by cold, trained for winter warfare, wearing white camouflage that blends perfectly into the frozen landscape. They move on skis, glide across snow that German boots struggle to cross. Their rifles fire. Their artillery answers. Their morale is unbroken. German soldiers stare in disbelief. These are not the shattered units of summer. These men advance into fire without hesitation, faces calm, movements precise. Officers shout orders. Lines form. The Red Army does not collapse. It attacks. Outside Moscow the front shudders. Panzer divisions attempt counterattacks and fail. Tanks break down before reaching assembly points. Fuel shortages leave units stranded, engines silent in open fields. Luftwaffe aircraft struggle to operate from frozen airstrips, maintenance impossible in the cold. Air superiority, once absolute, begins to fade. For the first time since the war began, German units dig in defensively, not to prepare the next advance but to survive. Hitler forbids Retreat. Men freeze in place, literally and figuratively. Some units lose more soldiers to cold than to enemy fire. Medics are overwhelmed, hands shaking as they work. Wounded men lie in snow, morphine frozen solid in ampoules. The battlefield is silent in a way that terrifies those who endure it. The illusion of inevitability is gone. Officers who once spoke of victory now speak only of endurance. Supply officers count remaining fuel by the liter. Tank commanders make impossible choices about which vehicles to abandon. Infantrymen dream not of medals but of warmth. Of sleep. Of survival. And somewhere in the frozen forests west of Moscow, the Red Army prepares its next move. Not a defense. Not a delay. A counterblow. The German advance has stopped. The machines that carried it here are breaking one by one, surrendered to ice and distance. What began as an unstoppable surge now hangs suspended in the cold, balanced on the edge of catastrophe. The ground hardens. The snow deepens. And the Soviets are about to strike back. The winter strikes back. December 5, 1941, 6:30 hours, the western approaches to Moscow. The sky is a pale, merciless gray. Snow crunches under boots hardened by weeks of cold. Breath hangs in the air, thick and visible, every exhale a reminder that survival itself now demands effort. Then the silence breaks. Soviet artillery opens fire along the entire front. Not scattered harassment. Not probing shots. This is a wall of sound, rolling and relentless. Katyusha rocket launchers scream, their shrill howl cutting through the frozen air before exploding among German positions in sheets of flame. Earth erupts. Trees shatter. Men dive into shallow foxholes carved from ground frozen like stone. The counteroffensive has begun. Red Army infantry surges forward behind the barrage, white camouflage blurring their forms against the snow. Ski troops glide over terrain German units cannot cross quickly enough. Tanks follow. T-34s, their wide tracks gripping ice where German panzers slip and stall. Engines roar confidently in the cold that has crippled the invaders. German sentries shout warnings already too late. Panzer crews scramble to their machines, fingers numb, hands clumsy in thick gloves. Starters grind uselessly. Engines cough then fall silent. Some tanks fire once, maybe twice before mechanisms cease. Others never move at all. Crews abandon them under fire, running through snow as Soviet bullets snap past. Orders pour in over radios choked with static. Hold positions. No retreat. Counterattack immediately. The words sound hollow now, detached from the reality unfolding at the front. Units attempt to comply and fail. Fuel is gone. Ammunition is low. Men are exhausted beyond endurance. The Red Army presses hard. Entire German regiments are pushed back kilometer by kilometer. Defensive lines crumble not from panic, but from sheer inability to resist. Machine guns freeze mid-burst. Mortars refuse to fire. Artillery crews hammer shells into breaches that will not close. Soviet guns answer with brutal accuracy, walking fire across trenches and assembly areas. In villages west of Moscow, fighting becomes savage and intimate. Houses change hands multiple times in a day. German infantry fights room to room, bayonets flashing, breath fogging, faces blackened by smoke. Soviet soldiers charge through doorways without hesitation, grenades clutched in mittened hands. There is no mercy, only urgency. For the first time, German soldiers feel hunted. Reports reach Army Group Center headquarters in fragments. Entire divisions falling back. Others surrounded. Commanders request permission to withdraw to defensible positions. Hitler refuses again and again. Standfast. Every meter must be held. The order becomes an obsession, repeated despite evidence that compliance means annihilation. Generals argue in whispered conversations, weighing loyalty against reality. Some disobey quietly, pulling units back without authorization, saving men at the cost of careers. Others obey to the letter and watch formations disintegrate under Soviet pressure. The Luftwaffe cannot stop it. Aircraft that do take off struggle in the cold, engines temperamental, landing gear brittle. Pilots fly fewer sorties, attack fewer targets, return to frozen airfields where ground crews fight ice as much as mechanics. Soviet fighters appear more frequently now, contesting skies once dominated by German crosses. The myth of invincibility shatters completely. German soldiers begin to retreat in earnest, not as a rout but as a grim, grinding withdrawal. Columns move west under constant harassment, leaving behind wrecked vehicles, frozen corpses, equipment abandoned where it stood. Roads are littered with the remains of the summer advance, now reclaimed by snow. At night, temperatures plunge further. Men huddle together for warmth, sharing body heat, whispering about home. Frostbite cases explode. Toes blacken. Fingers are lost. Medics amputate without anesthesia when necessary. There is no time. No choice. And still, Hitler orders no retreat. The front bows dangerously, threatening to snap entirely. Soviet forces exploit gaps, punching deep salients, forcing German units to fight their way out or be destroyed. Panic flickers at higher headquarters, carefully hidden behind official language. Words like elastic defense appear, euphemisms masking desperation. By mid-December, the German line has been pushed back tens of kilometers from Moscow. The capital is saved. The Soviet people know it. Stalin remains in the city, a calculated symbol of defiance. Factories continue producing weapons under bombardment. Parades are held in Red Square, troops marching directly from ceremony to the front. For German soldiers, the realization is crushing. This war is not ending. It is changing. What began as a campaign of speed and shock has become a battle of survival against cold, distance, and an enemy that refuses to die. The Panzer divisions that once raced across Europe now cling to frozen ground, battered and bleeding. The Red Army, written off months earlier, stands stronger with every passing day. Somewhere along the line, confidence gives way to dread. And as the snow continues to fall, burying the wreckage of ambition beneath a white, indifferent blanket, German commanders begin to understand a truth they can no longer escape. The winter has not merely slowed them. It has broken them. But the worst consequences of that realization have yet to unfold. Machines that would not move. January 1942, pre-dawn, somewhere west of Rzhev. The cold is absolute. -40 degrees Celsius. Sound carries too far in this air, every footstep a crack, every breath a risk. Steel groans softly as it contracts, a low, constant complaint from machines pushed beyond their limits. A Panzer IV stands abandoned in a clearing, its tracks locked solid in ice. Frost coats the barrel of its long gun, white and glittering under the moonlight. Inside, the engine block is a frozen mass. Oil has turned to tar. Fuel lines are clogged with crystals. No amount of coaxing will bring it back to life. This scene repeats itself endlessly along the front. German armored divisions, once the spearhead of the campaign, are now little more than static strongpoints. Tanks are dug in, used as immobile pillboxes, their mobility sacrificed to keep their guns firing. Even then, failure is common. Breech blocks freeze. Recoil systems stiffen. Crews dismantle weapons inside tents, warming parts with bare hands until skin sticks painfully to metal. The cold attacks everything. Machine guns jam after a few bursts. Mortar rounds crack when fired, metal unable to handle the shock. Radios fall silent as batteries die within minutes. Watches stop. Compasses behave erratically. The entire technological advantage Germany relied upon is being systematically erased by temperature alone. Supply lines, already strained, begin to collapse entirely. Trucks cannot start. Horses die in the traces, lungs freezing as they strain forward. Rations freeze solid. Bread must be hacked apart with bayonets. Water can only be obtained by melting snow, a process that costs precious fuel men cannot spare. Soldiers suffer quietly at first, then openly. Frostbite becomes epidemic. Toes are lost in the thousands. Fingers blacken and fall away. Faces crack and bleed in the wind. Men stop feeling pain altogether, a far more dangerous sign. Medics work constantly, hands shaking, amputations carried out with minimal tools. There are no hospitals close enough. Evacuation is slow, often impossible. And yet, orders continue to arrive demanding resistance. Hitler's stand-fast directive holds entire formations in exposed positions. Retreat, he insists, would lead to collapse. In some sectors this stubbornness does buy time. Soviet attacks crash against frozen defenses and break. But the cost is horrific. Units are ground down, replaced by others just as ill-prepared for the cold. German commanders begin to choose between obedience and survival. Some pull back quietly, using darkness and snowstorms to mask movement. Others hold, convinced that disobedience is treason. The front becomes uneven, dangerous gaps opening between units. Soviet forces exploit them mercilessly, encircling pockets, cutting off roads, forcing desperate breakouts through forests thick with snow and enemy fire. The Red Army has adapted completely. Their equipment works in the cold. Their soldiers are dressed for it. Ski troops appear where no one expects them, strike supply depots, vanish again. T-34 tanks move confidently across terrain that stops German armor cold. Soviet artillery pounds fixed positions with methodical precision, wearing defenders down day by day. For German soldiers, the psychological shift is profound. They are no longer hunters. They are targets. They wait for attacks they cannot predict, cannot always repel. Nights are the worst. Darkness stretches endlessly. Cold creeps into bones. Sleep comes in fragments, haunted by dreams of engines that will not start and weapons that fail at the moment of need. Letters home change in tone. Gone is the bravado of summer. In its place, cautious reassurances, half-truths, desperate hope. Men speak of weather more than combat, of survival more than victory. Censorship hides the worst, but fear seeps through between the lines. At higher headquarters, the truth is impossible to ignore. Losses are staggering. Equipment write-offs climb daily. Entire divisions are combat ineffective. The planned war of movement has become a static nightmare stretching across hundreds of kilometers of frozen land. And still, Hitler refuses to yield ground. Only in late January does he reluctantly authorize limited withdrawals in some sectors, far too late to recover what has been lost. The initiative is gone. The Red Army now dictates the tempo, launching attacks when and where it chooses, probing for weakness, confident in its endurance. The German army holds, but just barely. The idea of victory in the East, once spoken of as inevitable, is now unsayable. Officers think it but do not voice it. The campaign has failed in its fundamental objective. The Soviet Union has not been destroyed. Its army has not collapsed. Its industry continues to function. Its people fight on. And winter is not finished. The cold tightens its grip. Snow deepens. The front stabilizes only because both sides are exhausted. For the Germans, survival becomes the only measure of success. For the Soviets, survival has already turned into something more. Preparation. As February approaches, the Red Army regroups, reinforced, resupplied, hardened by victory and suffering alike. They have learned the enemy's weaknesses. They have seen the Panzers frozen in place. They know now that German power has limits. And those limits have been reached. What remains is not a blitzkrieg, but a grinding war of attrition. One Germany is no longer equipped to win. The moment of truth. February 1942 nightfall, the frozen forests near Demainsk. Snow falls in fine, whispering sheets, settling over everything, dead men, broken guns, abandoned vehicles, softening the violence without erasing it. The temperature has risen slightly, just enough to make the cold feel cruel instead of lethal. German units dig in where they stand. Foxholes are carved with axes and explosives into ground still half frozen. Logs are dragged into place with numb hands, forming crude bunkers roofed with snow and despair. Fires are forbidden. Smoke draws artillery. Men huddle in darkness, counting breaths, listening to the distant thud of Soviet guns probing the line. For the first time, the German army is fighting a war it did not plan for. Reports reaching Berlin are no longer optimistic. They are defensive. Words like stabilized and contained replace breakthrough, and encirclement. Losses are measured not in territory gained, but in kilometers not lost. The shift is subtle but irreversible. Hitler refuses to acknowledge it publicly. In speeches he blames generals, whether logistics, anything but his own assumptions. He insists that German willpower has been tested and proven, that holding ground through winter is itself a victory. The propaganda machine complies, presenting endurance as triumph. At the front, no one believes it. Officers see the truth in their casualty lists. Veteran NCOs see it in the faces of replacements, younger, thinner, already afraid. Tank commanders count operational vehicles on one hand. Infantry companies that once fielded 200 men now muster 40. Sometimes less. The Red Army senses it. Soviet operations grow bolder, more coordinated. Attacks are timed with weather and terrain, launched when German mobility is lowest. Ski battalions slip behind lines to cut communications. Artillery pounds command posts with unnerving accuracy. Encirclements are attempted again and again, forcing desperate air resupply efforts that strain the Luftwaffe to its limits. At Demayansk, German forces are surrounded completely. For weeks they survive only by air Ju-52 transports flying low through snowstorms, landing on frozen strips under fire. Supplies arrive just fast enough to prevent annihilation. Hitler points to this as proof that his stand-fast orders work. The generals see it differently. What saves Demayansk is not doctrine but luck, and luck is not a strategy. As winter grinds on, the cost becomes clearer. Fuel reserves are gone. Equipment wear is catastrophic. Training pipelines cannot replace experienced losses. The Red Army, meanwhile, grows stronger by the month, its tactics sharper, its confidence rising with every successful offensive. The realization spreads quietly through the German ranks. This war will not be decided quickly. It may not be decided at all. Soldiers begin to speak of if instead of when. If spring comes. If supplies arrive. If they survive another month. The language of certainty vanishes, replaced by conditional hope. In March the snow begins to melt. For a moment there is relief. Faces turn upward to weak sunlight. Fingers regain feeling. Engines start more easily. But the relief is short-lived. Mud returns, swallowing roads once more. The cycle begins again, cruel and familiar. Only now the Germans face it without illusions. They have not defeated the Soviet Union. They have awakened it. The campaign that was meant to end the war has instead ensured its expansion into something far larger, far more brutal. A war of factories and manpower. Of endurance and adaptation. A war Germany is not prepared to sustain. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Soviet commanders plan the future, not just to survive but to advance. They look west, beyond Moscow, beyond the frozen forests, toward territory that was once lost and will be reclaimed. And the German army, dug deep into foreign soil, begins to understand the most dangerous truth of all. The initiative has passed. It will not come back easily. From arrogance to attrition. April 1942, early morning, Army Group Center rear area. Snow retreats into dirty patches along the roadside, revealing the wreckage beneath. Burned trucks. Broken wagons. Tank hulks half buried in mud, their iron crosses dulled by rust and thaw. The battlefield of last winter does not disappear. It resurfaces. German units attempt to reorganize. New orders arrive promising renewed offensives, decisive summer blows, final victories still somehow possible. Maps are redrawn. Arrows appear again. But the men reading these orders no longer see certainty in ink. They see gaps. Shortages. Numbers that do not lie. Panzer divisions exist on paper more than in reality. A division once fielding 300 tanks now counts 50 operational vehicles, sometimes fewer. Crews are merged. Platoons become sections. Sections become squads. Maintenance units strip abandoned machines for parts, cannibalizing the dead to keep the barely alive moving. Fuel allocations are calculated by desperation, not planning. The Red Army watches. They do not rush blindly anymore. Reconnaissance probes German lines carefully. Artillery test responses. Where resistance is weak, pressure increases. Where it is strong, Soviet units disengage and strike elsewhere. This is no longer survival warfare. This is operational art, learned the hard way. German soldiers feel it immediately. They are reacting, not acting. Waiting for attacks instead of launching them. Digging, repairing, enduring. The language of blitzkrieg has vanished from daily life, replaced by talk of sectors, rotations, reliefs, concepts of a static war Germany never intended to fight. Hitler's leadership hardens. The winter's lessons are not absorbed, they are defied. He demands loyalty, obedience, absolute faith. Officers who question orders are removed. Some disappear quietly. Command becomes centralized, rigid, increasingly disconnected from the reality at the front. This rigidity costs lives. When Soviet attacks exploit gaps, German units lack authority to withdraw or reposition. They fight where they stand even when positions are indefensible. Casualties mount. Morale erodes. Veterans still fight hard, but belief, the invisible fuel of armies, runs dangerously low. And yet the war continues. Spring mud slows both sides, creating a temporary pause. German propaganda calls it a regrouping. Soldiers know it as exhaustion. They sleep whenever possible. They repair what can be repaired. They wait for summer, not with confidence but with grim resignation. Letters home speak of survival, not conquest. The Eastern Front has consumed the illusion of German superiority. Speed has been replaced by slog. Shock by endurance. The Red Army has proven it can absorb blows, adapt, and strike back harder. Germany's greatest strength, its rapid, decisive warfare, has been neutralized by space, climate, and human resistance. This is the turning point, though few recognize it fully yet. The frozen Panzer tracks outside Moscow are not just mechanical failures. They are symbols. Proof that technology without preparation, confidence without humility becomes vulnerability. Proof that mocking an enemy's environment is as dangerous as underestimating their will. As spring turns slowly toward summer, both sides prepare again. Germany plans one more great offensive, convinced it can still force victory through strength of arms. The Soviet Union prepares to endure it, and then answer. The war has entered a new phase. And the outcome, once assumed, is no longer certain. The price of mockery. May 1942, dusk, a quiet stretch of the Eastern Front. The ground is soft now, the air heavy with the smell of thawed earth and rust. Birds circle above fields that months earlier were killing grounds. The war has not ended here. It has settled in. German soldiers stand watch beside trenches reinforced with scavenged timber and sandbags torn from abandoned depots. Their uniforms are mismatched. Their equipment worn. Faces that once carried confidence now hold something harder to name, experience edged with caution. They have learned what the maps did not show. The Red Army is no longer invisible. Across the lines, Soviet units move with discipline and patience. Guns are cleaned. Baiklas maintained. New recruits drill beside veterans who survived the winter. Factories beyond the Urals pour out tanks, aircraft, artillery at a pace Germany cannot match. The balance has shifted quietly but decisively. Hitler still speaks of destiny. He orders new offensives, new objectives, convinced that willpower alone can reclaim what winter took away. But the men who must carry out those orders remember frozen engines, immobilized panzers, comrades lost not to bullets, but to arrogance and cold. Memory tempers obedience. The campaign against Moscow has failed. The blitzkrieg has been broken. What remains is a long war of attrition stretching across a continent, fueled by industry, manpower, and endurance. In that war, the Soviet Union grows stronger with every passing month. Germany grows thinner, more brittle, forced to gamble again and again just to keep pace. The frozen fields outside Moscow mark more than a halted advance. They mark the moment history turned. When confidence met climate. When speed met distance. When mockery met reality. From this point forward, every German victory will cost more. Every Soviet loss will teach faster. The momentum of the war has shifted, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in the slow, grinding certainty of survival proven. The Panzers will move again, but never as they did before. And the winter that was dismissed as irrelevant will echo through every decision that follows, a silent adversary that cannot be bombed, outmaneuvered, or ignored. The war in the East will rage on for years yet, but its outcome was written here. In ice, mud, and steel.